15 things you didn't know about the architecture industry. Welcome to Alux.com, the place where future billionaires come to get inspired. Hey there, Aluxers. Today we're looking way up toward the sky to admire architecture's amazing wonders. We want to focus this time on architecture and everything that surrounds this industry that helped to shape the world as we know it. From styles, problems, budgets, and crazy ideas to money, salaries, and mega buildings. By now, everyone knows that becoming an architect is a long and tedious journey. It's an industry that can help people and shelter those in need, while also mixing different elements and creating one-of-a-kind structures. Being an architect, a builder, a flipper, or even a carpenter requires a serious set of skills that range from patience, creativity, mathematics, even empathy. It might seem like an easy and fun job to have, but just like any field, it's more than meets the eye. It might be exhilarating to pass by a building or a park and proudly say that you designed it. But from sketch to inauguration day is a long way to go, and we're going to dig in and see just how long. Is it worth it? Is it fulfilling? Is it rich? Let's have a look. Number 1. The most expensive building in the world cost $15 billion. There are many luxurious skyscrapers and epic buildings in the world, but only one is the epitome of lavish lifestyle and opulence. The most expensive building in the world, right now, is the Burj Al Bait, located in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, that cost $15 billion to make. The construction consists of 7 skyscraper hotels and is a government-owned complex. The structure carries the name the Towers of God and are a mega project funded by the King Abdulaziz Endowment Project that strives to modernize the city in catering to its pilgrims. Mecca is one of the most important pilgrimage sites for Muslims all over the world and is visited by 15 million people each year. Number 2. Millennials are changing the way architecture is done. The younger generation that grew up watching YouTube videos and masters social media has different views about how buildings, skylines, and cities should look. They all want to differentiate themselves from the traditional style and integrate sophisticated and creative designs into their work. Instead of buildings, they're creating experiences. The cities of tomorrow will be shaped by risk-taking architects that are not afraid to be inspired by nature, human DNA, or music. This new wave of architects are also very interested in luxury and high-end materials. Number 3. The industry needs to cut the middleman. Almost all industries have a middleman down the supply chain or somewhere in between. They live on commissions and use their skills to connect offer with demand. Because the architect is too busy working and the builder is too busy finding suppliers, these middlemen come to the rescue for both parties. The downside of working with a middleman is that communication and deadlines are pushed back, frustration piles up, and sometimes nobody is happy. Depending on the type of project and size of the team, the middleman can be just another person that sends the message and tries to mediate the situation. Number 4. The UK has more architecture jobs than dentists or museum staff. When it comes to architecture and construction, big cities are the main hubs to look for. Although the market swings with the economic sector, there's still a high demand for architects, or at least that's what the UK thinks. Recent studies show there are more architecture jobs than dentists or museums or library jobs in the UK. The country is also an architectural center with over 50 schools, 10 of which are in London. If you're dreaming of an architecture career, head over to the UK. Number 5. It's a $300 billion industry. This vast industry that includes so many subsidiaries is now estimated to be worth around $300 billion worldwide. And since the demand for architectural services is growing, the market is set to be on a rise for the next few years. This industry can be segmented into education, government, healthcare, hospitality, industrial, residential, and retail, of which residential takes almost half. Most of the growth comes from the Asia-Pacific region, where the growth is driven by the presence of major players, availability of cheaper labor, good economic condition, and innovation. Number 6. Contrary to popular belief, architects are not paid that well. When you see all these amazing buildings and concepts, you would think architects are the luckiest people in the world. Unfortunately, most funds go toward building materials, interior decor, and supplies, not the architect that designs it. An architect's median salary sits around $76,500. This means that some architects make less and some more than $70,000. It's a tough industry where you need to put up with long hours, a lot of learning, and a lot of instability, because the housing market is dependent on economic fluctuations. Number 7. The gender gap is really steep in this industry. There are a handful of female architects in this industry, but you rarely hear or see a big project being designed or run by a woman. The gender gap issue in the architecture field goes back in time and is still not talked about enough. Looking at the biggest architecture firms, we see that women are paid less for the same jobs and projects, or fail to make it onto the teams. Even Zaha Hadid's firm, the late famous female architect, is paying females 20% less than men. Being a female architect is tough. Number 8. The Louvre removed an explicit architectural design. Architecture can be quite controversial and scandalous. Even though most people don't have the knowledge to comment on it, they still do. The following building we're going to talk about is quite a strong and explicit statement. It belongs to Atelier Valéchou, and it portrays a couple having sex. It was first shown at the Louvre Museum in Paris, but then later was moved due to the harsh online criticism. They also faced criticism after removing it as well, because they decided to censor rather than to educate. The structure is a 12-meter livable architectural sculpture titled Domesticator and is no longer part of the Paris Contemporary Art Fair. Number 9. More companies are building their own mini-cities. The newest trend with super companies such as Google, Facebook, or Amazon is to build mini-cities that allow their employees to live there happily and dedicate more hours to the company. These projects offer housing, office buildings, supermarkets, kindergarten, gyms, parks, and everything you could imagine. This new trend of small ecosystems is more beneficial to the companies and less for the people that live in them, because you end up living in a bubble that's controlled by your employer. This merger of public and private sector seems to be appealing to big companies. Apple and Louis Vuitton are other examples of this trend. Number 10. Norman Foster, one of the richest architects, makes roughly $2.5 million yearly. One of the greatest and most respected architects that's still alive today in the industry is Sir Norman Foster. Along with his company Norman and Partners, it's one of the biggest names in modern architecture. At 83 years old, he's one of the richest architects of our day. He makes roughly $2.5 million each year and has an estimated fortune of $190 million. He designed and helped to redesign Wembley Stadium or Apple Park, among other famous constructions all over the world. And since we're talking about houses and architects, let's have a look at the top 10 most expensive homes in Europe. There are some quite luxurious ones. Just click in the top right corner to check it out. Number 11. Starting your own architecture firm is not a side hustle. If you're tired of having a boss or you want to be able to choose your projects, then maybe you should start your own firm. Just like in any other field, you'll need a few basic things: office space, employees, software, interns, and many other small things. For example, a regular office space will be around $1,500 per month, about $7,000 for computers, software, and desks, about $300 per month for marketing. All of these costs, along with salaries and taxes, are a part of the business plan. All you have to do is find projects and keep it running. It's non-stop work, but it will pay off in the end. Number 12. Architecture was once a category at the Olympic Games. The Olympics used to be very different when it first started off. The first editions celebrated and awarded music, painting, sculpture, literature, and even architecture. Yes, it might sound a little bit odd, but even the Olympics have been through some changes over the years. But even back then, they only considered these arts only if they were sports-related, so sports music, sports paintings, and sports designs. However, these sports-related art awards were dropped after the London Games in 1948. Number 13. The Empire State Building generates more revenue from tourism rather than office space. The Big Apple, or New York as most people call it, has a number of emblematic buildings people die to visit and photograph. One of them is the notorious Empire State Building, measuring 443 meters and overlooking the entire city and beyond. The building was finished 87 years ago and cost over $500 million. It's visited by 4 million people every year. With 85 floors being occupied by offices, the Empire State Building makes more money from tourism and the $20 ticket than from rent. Number 14. Lego used to make architecture pieces. From a young age, kids are faced with the fun side of architecture when they get to play with Lego. Although the company is a famous toy manufacturer, they wanted to experiment with real architecture. In the late 1960s, the son of the Lego founder tried to make a Lego model of the house he was building, but it didn't come out to scale because Lego bricks have a 5:6 width-to-height ratio, so he created Modulex. These new bricks were later discontinued, but for a period of time they were actually used by architects. Number 15. Famous architectural buildings also get fined for breaking the law. One of the most emblematic architectural buildings in the world, Sagrada Familia, is still being finished 130 years after construction began. The project started under Antoni Gaudi's guidance and designs, and nowadays, decades after his death, they're still following his instructions. The basilica is not funded by the Spanish government, but by private investors and ticket sales. Recently, they got a €36 million fine for not having a construction permit. But even so, they're hoping to finish it by 2026. That marks 100 years since Gaudi's death. Meanwhile, the unfinished site is being visited by over 3 million tourists, and a simple calculation tells us that this basilica took longer to build than the pyramids. Working in the architecture field is both a blessing and a curse. In comparison to other jobs, you get to see your work take life and stand the test of time. You can help people, you build shelters and wonders for the eyes to gaze upon. For the passionate and crazy ones, this is the best way to unleash your genius mind. But what do you guys think? Is this the best job to have, or do you think it's better to be a doctor or an engineer? Let us know in the comments below. And of course, since you're still with us, we have one more special fact designed just for you and your curious mind about this industry. Let's see if you saw this one coming. Number 16. The Sims game started out as an architecture simulator. One of the most famous games in the world has a strong connection to architecture. The beloved Sims game started out as an architecture simulator. The game was inspired by the functionality side of this industry. They wanted to create a simulation game about enabling human behavior and interaction through design. After a few failed attempts, they decided to focus on the social aspect and the characters. What started out as a useful simulator turned into a worldwide phenomenon and record sales of over 100 million copies of the game. Thank you for spending some time with us, Aluxers. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss another video. We also handpicked these videos, which we recommend you watch next. You can talk to us on all social medias or ask a question on our website, Alux.com. Thank you for being an Aluxer, and we'll see you back tomorrow.